Welcome back. We have a new edition of People Over Politics. And of course, we have a brand new guest. We have an election coming up, a DC election. And, there's a lot on the line. We have a brand new dynamic candidate. I found out about him probably 6 months ago from a politicking interview. Definitely someone to check out. Hey, Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Mr. Mitchell, thank you for having me. How are you, council member?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I've seen you in action. I've seen you, during my time in DC, helping other candidates. So I'm looking forward to Tuesday. Tuesday, hopefully we know some results. I know that it could take all the way up to the 28th, they say.
Look, let's hope not, but it'll be what it is, and we're prepared for it no matter what the situation is.
Of course. And Ryan, before we get too far, people, who don't know about you, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, let me just tell you about me as the guy. Me as the man. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I started in elementary school at John Eden. I went to Holy Trinity. Then I went to DeMath for 2 years, played basketball before deciding to transfer to St. John's, where I continued to play. I did a prep year at Hargrave Military Academy, and I got a few scholarship offers to several schools. Was waiting on, a couple of other schools to come through, but ultimately I decided to go to Elon. One of my other friends wanted to go there, and he was going to be a walk-on. So that was a major part of the influence for why I chose to go to Elon. It was also further south than DC, so I thought the weather was going to be a bit better too. And from there, I transferred to Stony Brook. That's in Long Island, New York, and that's where I got my BA in psychology. I came back to DC, and I first worked at the WIC State Agency. That's Women's, Infants, and Children's State Agency for the District of Columbia. And then I said, okay, what am I going to do? I continued to play basketball for a bit locally, and I got on some basketball teams, some semi-pro and pro teams. And then I ultimately decided that I would go to law school. I worked at the Patent and Trademark Office. I worked at a law firm called Aducci, Mastriani, and Schomburg. That gave me the bug. That gave me the itch to go to law school. I graduated from Southern Illinois in 2.5 years. That's in Carbondale, Illinois. It's the middle of nowhere, much different from what I experienced in Washington, D.C. And I did a visiting semester at Villanova. And during that time, I was a judicial fellow for Glennis, the Honorable Glennis Hill, and the Court of Common Pleas. That's their criminal division there. Before coming back to D.C. to get my LLM and intellectual property, that's patents, copyright, trademark, from the George Washington Law School. And while I was at the George Washington Law School, a good friend of mine, his name's Tony Skinn, former, he was a part of that George Mason Final Four team that went to, he reached out to me, asked me for some legal help, and that forced me to start a law firm. Started a law firm, one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. I've been all over DC, in and out of courts, taking on all kinds of matters, from workers' compensation, trademark infringement cases, been before the Court of Appeals, DUIs. I've done landlord-tenant matters, probate matters, handled a divorce before, a child support issue and a couple matters. There's just so many different things I've done, and that's put me to the point where I said, hey, look, in 2020, we watched what happened. The world kind of ripped apart. And I said, okay, I want to use my battle-tested legal skills to help more people. And that put me in this race.
And I appreciate you telling us your background. One of the things that, a lot of people don't understand is what state's attorneys do and what attorney generals do. Right. So those are, and even, some of the judges and some of the other races like clerk of the court and stuff like that. So what exactly does an attorney general do, and specifically for DC?
Right. So the District of Columbia is structured and mimics a state, although we don't have statehood. The Attorney General for the District of Columbia is the chief legal officer for the district government. That's all of its agencies, the mayor, as well as oversight of council. It's an independent agency, so it's supposed to have the ability to exact a legal decision fairly. And we also have a split jurisdiction with the U.S. Attorney's Office, much like other states, between federal matters and state and local matters. So we have control over our juvenile offenses and adult misdemeanors. Uh, the U.S. Attorney's Office here in the district has oversight of felony offenses. And obviously, this being a federal jurisdiction, it makes sense. But until we achieve statehood, that system will remain in place.
Yes. And I mean, hey, you brought me to a few points. One would be that you're the chief legal officer, so you decide the law. And we know that the gray market, has been under fire, um, especially in relation to cannabis. So, as next attorney general, are you supportive of the are you supportive of the gifting market?
So I've had this question posed to me from people in the medicinal side and
Okay.
then those on the gifting side. I
Sure.
think that I am a strong proponent of the legalization and the decriminalization, or further decriminalization and the legalization of marijuana or cannabis. And until that is achieved, I salute the gifting markets. We need to make sure that we are also protecting the established businesses that are in place for the medicinal uses, and making sure that there isn't some sort of product that hits the market that isn't legitimate, that also undermines the prices of that legalized market, or the criminalized market, medicinal market. So it's a balance you have to strike, and because there is this issue, this divide, I think we're going to have to reassess where the law is in order to make it a more fair industry for everyone who's put the hard work in and who will be able to put in the hard work in years to come.
I completely agree with you there. And the other thing you spoke on was, statehood. As I've been in the community, door knocking, lit dropping, you see a lot of, statehood signs. Are you a proponent? Are you pushing for DC to get statehood? I know I myself am. I'm a Maryland resident, but I want to see you guys get statehood.
So, I think it's interesting. There are people who think it's not going to be achieved because there's just not the votes in Congress. We've also have the issue of what does that look like for the district? How does it change this historic place for residents who call this home? And until we figure out what that looks like, and we have a real concrete plan of moving forward, you know, I think it's going to be a bit difficult to achieve it. However, I'm a strong proponent for it. I think we should can have control over our budget. I should think we should have control over our laws. We should have control over what judges we appoint, things of that nature. That's statehood to me. And you know what federal land is ours and who owns the right of way to certain places. That's another question. But we should be able to appoint our judges. We should be able to make our laws. We should be able to control our budget. We should be able to prosecute our adult felonies. And we need to have, a jail that can house our, prisoners, things of that nature. Um, and that will make us closer to being a state. That puts us there.
Hmm. I agree. I mean, you bring up a lot of great points, and as you're out on the doors, I'm sure you hear, the concerns and people who want statehood to happen. So I definitely believe that it will happen. I think that you guys have gained momentum. I've heard about it a lot more in the recent years. So definitely hopeful. And so Ryan, early voting has begun. You guys are early voting down there. One of the things that I've realized just being in there is people aren't coming to the polls as much as I would have expected. But of course, mail-in ballots. Like people got to really
Yep.
think about how they tailor their campaigns now because mail-in ballots are such a critical thing, right?
You've hit the nail on the head with that one. Because everyone received a ballot in the mail, people are mailing in their ballots. People aren't going in person as we would have expected. So what would be best, right? I think there's certain things about campaigning you can't cheat. You have to put people on the ground. You try to get through the air. What does the air look like? You're talking about digital campaigning, social media, TV, radio, things where you're not putting actual physical copies of some sort of literature in someone's hands. You're giving them mass, you're reaching the masses over one, you know, airwave,
Hmm.
or, and so,
Or the traditional
you know,
mailers.
right. So then there's mail, right? You got to get that too. Go right to where people are. And, you just have to hope, and that what you've done, those layers add up to a wonderful product that gets you elected, because you could have people out at uh, election sites, polling sites, and you might see 5 people in a day. Was it worth your time to have hours and hours? And did you convert those people that were walking in to vote early? Was it worth it? And they can tell you anything walking in the door. You're not going to know until election day what people actually truly decided. So I think we're in a space of learning,
Mhm.
what actually works. And there's some traditional things you just can't cheat. You got to get on doors, got to get in mailboxes, and you got to go and show up. Just show up and talk to people.
You're right. You're right. And I think that you have it right. And one of the things that I've seen is you have the grassroots spirit, right? So you're not afraid to get in front of voters, and you should be the same type of person where you're not afraid to step in a room of 5 voters. And you're not afraid to step in a room of 50 voters, right? Like we see that, like, sometimes when you become elected, you become comfortable with certain circles, certain conversations. So the fact that you put yourself out there, I do applaud that, and anybody else who's running.
Well, thank you. I think you also, this is something that's key. And this is a secret ingredient, I think, for anyone running in the future with the space like this. You have to be willing to talk to a room of 5 people, 2 people, 15 people, 30 people, 100 people. And execute when you get out there. You have to be able to try to move the needle. You have to try to be inspiring, encouraging, and get your message across, because the truth of the matter is, a run with 5 people could end up being 25 people, because of those 5 people going out there and sharing it with 5 people, or one of the 5 people going and sharing it with 20. And so that's why you take those opportunities to share your message and just share who you are. And so, with that in mind, I would encourage any young person, anybody deciding to run, to make sure they're getting in front of as many people wherever they are, because that's what you have to do. You want to be an elected official, you want to be a government official, you have to meet the people where they are. And that's what this is about. You go and you talk to 3 people, you go and you talk to 15 people, and everything in between, and as much as you possibly can, because those are the people you're ultimately going to serve.
And I think those are great points, Ryan. You still sound like you have good intentions and pure heart. And one of the reasons why I like you, and I think people are gravitating towards you, is because you're not the establishment pick, right? So, like, you weren't handpicked to run for this seat. Like, you made the decision to run for this seat, and you're proving that to the voters. Why you deserve the seat. So. Um,
I appreciate that.
No, for sure. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask is, from an attorney general perspective, I love legislation. Does the attorney general have any influence in, like, deciding or recommending legislation, like to the council?
Absolutely. You're watching it happen with the current AG, but when they know what your agenda is and they know what your issues are, you are also considered an agency, and you can recommend legislation, you can recommend regulations, you can recommend when other laws are being enacted or promulgated. There's this legal sufficiency uh, requirement, and that comes through the Office of Attorney General. And the Office of Attorney General has the ability to amend and tweak laws so that they are constitutional and don't have other uh, issues, so that they are, in fact, legal.
Hmm. Okay. So as next AG, what would be some of your priorities that you present and push to the council?
So I wouldn't specify any one area. We're in a space now where we have an amazing amount of issues. And when I say amazing, I don't mean it in a positive way. There is just a mind boggling amount of issues that we have to confront and work hard to resolve. We have a housing issue. We've got a crime spike. We've got environmental justice issues. We got student loan crisis. We got gun violence ramping up. We have women's rights being you know uh, affected again, and again and again. So we have to go in and out of courtrooms. We have to make sure the laws that we put on the books are actually doing the good that they are uh, trying to achieve. We have to go through and amend our code because we've got so many old, antiquated laws that don't apply to now. And we don't need to leave it up to the interpretation of a judge or to what precedent said from many years ago. We need to go ahead and update our code. We need to make sure that people are having the ability to live a life of equality as their peers. So we have to balance the playing field. And I believe we do that with how we legislate and regulate.
Okay. Well, if we're of course speaking about legislation, one of the things that I was really passionate about is the need for housing justice, right? Like you mentioned, housing being a big issue. I live in the city of Laurel. Funny enough that like as DC continues to gentrify, what native Washingtonians move on down into Maryland and Laurel. Of course, not that it's a problem, but one of the things that I have seen is like rent hikes and extreme rent hikes in some of these properties in Laurel. Like, I've spoken to constituents who have faced 400, 600, 800 dollar increases, from lease to lease. Some of them which being
Wow.
seniors. So
Wow.
like, yeah, it's just, right, mind-boggling, right? Because the thought is we're still not out of a pandemic, right? There's still
Right.
repercussions of the pandemic, and honestly, people are still getting sick, so we're definitely not out of the water.
Right.
But
Right.
one of the things I wanted to ask you was, a lot of people tell me that DC has protections or more protections than Maryland, and they're doing better. So what are these some protections? What are some of these protections that exist for renters in DC?
So DC has always been tenant friendly, employee friendly. There's currently a moratorium on evictions right now.
Really?
People are
Okay.
still in the place, and we have a rental assistance program. They say, oh, it's not enough. We
Okay.
have rent control as well, and we have to enforce those laws. There's also, the tenants TOPA. So there's a Tenants Opportunity to Purchase Act that allows the right of first refusal. That means if a person wants to sell a property, they have to try to sell it to a tenant first, and that can really be a process that really gets hung up for people to move and transfer property. So that kind of causes, some balance there. And I think we should evaluate that, especially if you're telling me that Maryland doesn't have it as good as they have it in DC. But again, that matters what side of the fence you're on. And I also want to just add in there that you are experiencing a rent hike due in part because of people leaving the city because it's too expensive, and it's having a tertiary effect. It's a domino effect, a ripple effect of the economic spike here in costs, and it's spreading out into the surrounding areas.
Yes. And I agree, and that is one of the things that I've seen. And you bring up some great points, so I definitely have to look at the TOPA because at a recent meeting, somebody brought up that. So I definitely want to look more into that. And of course, one of the things I wanted to say, I got a piece of your literature. I saw that you're the native son, so of course you're a DC native. One of the things that I got to bring up, Chocolate City isn't quite Chocolate City anymore, right? So what does the future of DC look like, and you know, uh, is the culture still going to exist, right? People trying to cancel go-go music, uh, you know people trying to get Howard to move their campus for a dog park. Like, is DC still going to be DC?
Oh man, look, The answer is yes, right? Go is what it has always been. I hear it more and more as people drive up and down the street with their windows down and sunroofs open. I think that mumbo sauce on your chicken wings and potatoes, that's not going anywhere. I think that
But your mayor doesn't like mumbo sauce. I gotta put that out there. I gotta put that out there. I gotta
say
call
what?
her out. I said, but your mayor doesn't like mumbo sauce. I gotta
Look,
call her out.
maybe she hasn't had Smokey's mumbo sauce. Smokey's mumbo sauce on 14th and Decatur,
Okay.
between Decatur and Crittenton. That's where it's at, man. Not everybody's mumbo sauce is the same. Because I'll tell you what, if I've had Smokey's and then I went to have someone else's, and that's all I saw across the street, I don't like mumbo sauce that much either. And if it wasn't good, maybe she just had some not so good mumbo sauce.
No, I mean
But
it's
that was a while ago, man.
yeah, I'll give her a pass, man. But I'll never forget it. I'm like, man, how you gonna be a mayor in DC and don't like mumbo
You
sauce?
gotta you gotta at least say, you gotta at least address it.
Yes.
But you're right. That was look, I think that all these things happen in cycles. And DC is going to remain vibrant. It's going to achieve a balance, and I hope that as Attorney General, I can keep historic residents in place by making sure tax codes don't continue to force seniors out of their homes. I can ensure that people have a estate plan in place so that they can pass down property, and make sure that wealth is being created through the generations.
Okay. And I feel like one of the big things on everybody's mind, we hear it all the time. In Maryland we have a race, and a lot of the governor candidates, they talk about being tough on crime, addressing the crime issue. Can we politic our way out of crime?
So the deal is, you got to give people real opportunities. So when
Sure.
people come around talking about they want to do X, Y, and Z, until we start fixing the root causes of what leads to crime, that's housing insecurity, food insecurity, education insecurity. You're putting despair in people's lives, and what they turn to is crime, because everyone wants to be successful. Everyone wants to have money so they can put a roof over their head and feed themselves. And what are the opportunities that exist for people to do that? Most people aren't just you're not born into a criminal element. It's created around you. And if we aren't actually putting the resources in place to make sure that people don't have to have those experiences or turn to it, we're going to continue to see it. And I just think it just takes smart people who care. Like, I care. Like, I hate the fact that I know people who've died. I hate the fact that I know people who've shot people. Why are guns getting into people's hands? Why does it continue to happen? And it's not just a black thing, And let's just abuse ourselves of that thought process. If you go and look at statistics, white people shoot more white people than black people, or Hispanic people shoot white people. Black people shoot black people more than white people or Hispanic people shoot black people. It's a neighborhood thing, right? It's a who
It's in
you're
relation
around kind of
in
thing,
relation to
right?
proximity.
And exactly, that's what this is about. So a narrative of black on black crime needs to stop. Stop trying to vilify black people. We have domestic terrorists. That's what we're calling all of these people who have AR-15s, and they go around and they cause mass hysteria when they're doing these awful things. And as much as they occur, we don't talk about them. So we've heard of 3 or 4 this year, but mind you, the number must be around 240 or 250 mass shootings here in the United States in 2022 alone. So what does crime really look like? What does violent crime really look like? Is it really an inner city thing? And that's a term we have to stop using too, right? We're not saying it's just a black thing. This is a time where economic despair is on the rise. Guess what
Mhm.
happens when economic despair is on the rise? Crime gets on the rise.
For sure. People
So we have to
struggle.
start taking cues. We have to start taking cues from our neighbors in Canada and in Europe for how they're able to reduce gun violence and certain types of crimes while they're also experiencing hardships.
I mean, I think you brought up great points. The fact that we need to address how we're going to deal with the guns, especially the prevalence of guns on our streets. But you also brought up the point of, like, we need to think about the root causes instead of just like throwing more authority. Like I've heard the law and order perspective from so many people. We need to fund, throw more money at the police, because one of the things that I commonly tell the older folks is like, when I agree with the term defund the police, it's not the fact that I believe that there's going to be no peace officers on the street. It's the fact that I believe that we're going to reallocate resources, to social programs that would benefit people, in which they wouldn't end up in the penal system. That's what I say to that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think one, I think you got to get there, right? We need some immediate fixes, and right now, and this may be the wrong way to be thinking about it. You know, we need. I guess you need officers. There's been a level of attrition from the police force now. Crime's going up. Police historically have created a deterrent for crime, right? And I think we need to start having, cross training. What does that mean? You're hiring social workers. You're hiring people who are mental health specialists as police officers. So you have the walk, you have the talk gently, carry a big stick. Walk gently, carry a big stick. That's what that would do. You have people who are educated who are your police officers, not people who are, you know, uh, not sensitive to those that they're policing. We need to be hiring police officers from DC, people who are going to be policing the places that they're from. So there's a connectivity to the police that to the residents that you're policing. Um, you know, I just think we have to be smarter. And Gary Chambers said it best. He said, "Look, if locking people up would make us safer, we should be the safest country on the planet." But that's not the case, right? We keep locking people up, but we're not getting any safer. And why is that? Because the same things that cause people to be in the criminal element aren't being removed. It's a common sense thing. It's like,
Yeah,
who's thinking? Who is out there thinking? you know and
yeah.
it's a design feature that's probably been instituted with a level of purpose, and I think until we rip that apart, we're going to continue to see the same things over and over and over.
No, I mean, you brought up great points, and brother Gary Chambers, definitely a good brother. Hoping for him to win. That's another person that isn't an establishment choice. But
He's
before I
doing
get,
a great job.
you say you're doing a great job.
No, he's
Did
doing a great job raising money and campaigning.
did you go when he came to DC? Did you
I
guys link
did.
up?
I went to that smoke shop. We got a picture together, the one on Pennsylvania Avenue. I know he came back because he felt so much love in DC. Why not
Yeah.
come on back? So yeah, I've met him before. We know one
Okay.
another.
No, big ups, big ups. He did. He came back for the cannabis festival, so I got to, help host something for him when he came for that. But him being a cannabis advocate, as I tell people, we need more senators in the U.S. Senate that are cannabis friendly, because we could pass the MORE Act as many times as we like in the House, but until it passes the Senate, it's really a no go.
Right, right.
Um, but before I get you out of here, I wanted to ask you three quick questions, called the lightning
Let's
round.
do it.
What is your favorite, Pepsi or Coke?
I don't drink either one of those.
Fair, fair, fair. Water. What water is best, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
looking great. That's to keep the skin looking great. The next question is, who is your favorite political figure?
Whew, Barack Obama, John Lewis.
I did see your John Lewis stuff. So that was good one. No, that was a great campaign piece. I definitely like that
Yeah,
one.
look, Elijah Cummings is great as well. Sheila Jackson is great as well. The list really goes on and on and on.
I'm surprised you didn't throw out my man, the people's champ, the forever mayor, Marion Barry.
Ah, Marion Barry, yeah, Marion Barry.
I'm
Okay,
surprised you didn't throw out. That's one of my favorites, man, because like my man went to jail and came back, still the people's champ. You know what I mean? Like, and
right,
he was
right.
always authentic.
Decent,
He was always
you
authentic.
know,
So
a guy from Memphis, a guy from Memphis, Tennessee, where my chairperson's from.
yeah.
She's from Memphis.
Huh. Okay. Okay. And
hmm
so the very last thing I wanted to ask you, and this is a very big question: who's your favorite superhero?
Man, I have So many. I think Dr.
And
Manhattan is
why?
the baddest dude out though.
Is it who is it?
Oh, he
You
Dr.
said
Manhattan. He had like he could like
Manhattan.
he could like
Okay.
replicate himself. He could do all types of stuff. There was nothing that he really couldn't achieve. I don't know what his weakness is actually. So I
Hmm.
love that.
And I do remember was he in
And I'm
Avengers?
not talking.
Was he
I'm
in
talking
Avengers?
about like the Watchmen.
Oh, the Watchmen.
The
The Watchmen. Yeah,
Watchmen.
that's what it
Not
was.
the
That's what it was.
not. I haven't watched the HBO movie, the HBO series. I've only seen it as the movie from a few years ago.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Ryan, of course, I wish you the best out there. You got a few days left until the primary election date, and
Okay.
I can't wait to celebrate with you. But one of the things I wanted to say was tell people how they can stay connected with you and how they can reach out.
You can find me on Instagram, Ryan Jones ESQ. That's Ryan Jones Esquire. You can find me on Twitter, Ryan Jones 4AGFOR. You can find me at Ryan Jones for DC Attorney General on Facebook, and just watch this video over and over and over again, and find me on YouTube.
For sure. And this is how you see, that Ryan's a real person. He's not just a candidate, trying to politic you all day. He actually lives a life and is a real person. So definitely check out this interview, get to know the candidate. We have a very important election coming up. So get out there.
That's right.
And vote. I appreciate
All
you.
right, Martin. Councilmember Mitchell, this has been an ultimate pleasure of mine. I'm glad we got this done. I'll see you around, okay?
Yes, I'll see you soon. Appreciate you. So that was this week's edition of People Over Politics. We had a great guest, Ryan Jones. Look forward to seeing the results of this upcoming election. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good one.
Hi, my name is William Honolulu Jr., and I'm the host of the BlackUSA.news morning show and the president of the Grinding Gang Incorporated. The Grinding Gang is an organization that helps small business owners in the nonprofit and for-profit communities figure out how to make sense of all the noise. There's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. We help you develop business plans. We help you figure out what to do with a lot of the information you receive, and we also help you figure out how to become more profitable. We also host a variety of workshops. You can check out our next workshop on grant writing right here.